Moving on, we have Super RType. The RType franchise and Gradius series, which I'll be talking about next, are probably the two biggest names in space shoot-'em-ups. Super RType definitely lives up to its reputation with a game that controls incredibly well, but is also very hard in a reasonable fashion. If you get hit, because you overlooked a bullet or flew too far forward, not because the game was shooting so many bullets on screen that they can't be managed, or pulling enemies out of the environment out of nowhere. Every time I died when recording this gameplay footage you're watching now, not once did I consider it a cheap shot by the game. I clearly overlooked something that in hindsight I shouldn't have overlooked, and I could have paid attention to and noticed. Of course, that enemy would shoot bullets behind them as they flew past. I'd seen those mines coming in the last few playthroughs. I should have been paying attention, that sort of thing. It's what makes in my book for a good difficulty level. A game where, when I fail, I know why I failed, and what I need to do next time to improve. Not because, oh, I jumped on this platform, and the friction amount of the level design made that platform too short to be actually jumpable on. Not because, oh, all of a sudden enemy pops out from nowhere and clobbers you, and you didn't memorize that enemy placement. Nothing like that. If you have the right distance from the edge of the screen, you'll see the enemies coming, you can avoid them. If you take out enemies swiftly enough, you won't get shot. That sort of thing. Nothing is arbitrary. Nothing requires leaps or outright suspensions of the logic and assumptions that the game has operated on up to this point. Super RType achieves those goals wonderfully. There are two problems, though. First, I encountered some slowdown. Now, the emulator I'm using is shooting for accuracy, and I have a fairly good computer, so this slowdown likely occurred in the original game as well. So that is an issue. Additionally, the game doesn't use checkpointing, unlike other space shooters, in particular Gradius, where when you die, if you're using checkpointing, you have a point in the level that you go back to where you can theoretically recover some of your power-ups and pick up where you left off. You don't have to play through the whole level in one go. In Super RType, if you die anywhere in the level, even to the boss, you have to beat the whole level again on that one life. As opposed to, again, the midpoint, the boss fight, somewhere close to where you died, and somewhere where you can recover. We'll get into this again later with Gradius. It's frustrating, but the game is still enjoyable, and other aspects of this make up for those elements. Continuing with the shooters, we have Gradius III. Now, Gradius III, on the other hand, isn't quite as well balanced. Unlike Super RType, it has limited continues, which I've already gone into over the course of this episode. Also, the game has much more frequent slowdown. By the time you notice the incoming attacks, oftentimes it's much too late to do anything about it because you don't have enough time to react because everything is slowed down so much. My suspicion is for the slowdown is that the developers bit off more than they can chew in terms of the graphical capabilities of the Super Nintendo. They assumed that it could handle more stuff on screen than they thought it could, whether due to coding issues on their part or actual limitations of the hardware, which causes things to get to a crawl. This is particularly noticeable in the second level, where you have a whole bunch of little bubble things which, when you shoot them, turn into smaller bubbles, all of which have transparency to various degrees, which causes a bunch of graphical effects that make things more hardware intensive, at least for the Super Nintendo. That said, this game does some things better than Super RType. The game checkpoints you in several places and levels, beginning, midpoint, some cases a second midpoint, and then the boss fight. Additionally, Gradius II lets you, for the first time, customize your upgrade path to something that fits your playstyle, which is definitely a step in the right direction. You like lasers? You can do the lasers. If you prefer the little ring shot that's basically sort of a shotgun-y thing, you can do that. It's wonderful, and I'd say that this makes Gradius III probably the stronger space shooter of the two I've covered this episode, and certainly the strongest title in the Gradius series. Moving into sports games, we have Nolan Ryan's Baseball. Nolan Ryan's Baseball is half of a good baseball game. On the Super Nintendo, the speed of movement for outfielders has finally gotten to a speed where a human being can move fast enough to get ahead of the baseball when it's knocked into the outfield. However, the speed of batting is bizarrely sluggish, particularly compared to NES baseball games, which makes gameplay a less enjoyable experience than it could have been otherwise. Continuing with the baseball front, we have Super Bases Loaded. Super Bases Loaded is a gorgeous game. It uses Mode 7 scrolling, rotation, and scaling in a whole bunch of wonderful little ways, from some camera panning when you start at bat, to the baseball flying toward the camera depending on the angle in which you hit it at and which way it flies. Animations for pitching and hitting are also wonderfully fluid, and the game provides a radar in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, which provides valuable information on where the player you're controlling is in relation to the ball, which also lets you control outfielders when they are outside of the camera view and control them well, which makes the fielding even better than it was on the NES for this series. That said, the one fault is I'd gotten reaccustomed to the batting style from batting cues from other NES baseball games where the camera perspective is behind the batter's back, and so I had to kind of try to unlearn that and relearn bases loaded timing. Somewhat effective, but still not quite as good. I'm still hitting a lot of foul balls, but it's something you have to work with if you're going to be playing this game. Wrapping up the episode, we have Howls Hole In One Golf. Howls Hole In One Golf was almost the game that showed just how good golf can be on the Super Nintendo, but a few hiccups stop it from being great. Good stuff first. The game does Mode 7 flybys of each hole you play, so you can see it when it starts and what way it moves and that sort of thing. Not without its faults, the Mode 7 flybys do not show any trees or obstacles like that in the course. It'll show sand traps and water hazards, but not trees, which are something else you have to account for. Additionally, the game's controls are intuitive enough to make going through the fairways go very smoothly, though it does run into a few issues, like recommending clubs based on distance to the pin as opposed to your lie, like recommending a wood when you're in the rough 200 yards from the pin. A wood is a good club for every 200 yards from the pin, certainly, but if you're in the rough, you need a little more loft. You need like an iron. Additionally, the game doesn't go to a closer to the ground camera angle when you're on the green, which makes it hard to get a good read of the green, which is to a certain degree part of the point when you're putting. You have to manage the slope and other quirks of the green. And this can lead to, and led in my case, to me frequently overshooting my putts, if only on the first hit. Otherwise, it's a decent golf outing. There are better, and there will be better, though. This is, as far as these Best of the Rest episodes are concerned, the best lineup I've gotten thus far. SimCity is a definitely strong pick of the bunch, but Gradius III is no slouch either, depending on whether you want something more relaxed and laid back or a more fast-paced title. Now, next time, we have the last 8 titles for the Super Nintendo before we get into Nintendo Power's 5th year. If you enjoyed the show, please like the video and subscribe to this channel to be informed when the next episode comes out. And if you're interested in supporting the show, please feel free to toss a little money my way in my tip jar, either through a one-time donation via PayPal, or by backing my Patreon for a reasonable monthly donation, whatever fits your budget. Links are up here on the YouTube page. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.